Hey guys, today we're going to talk about adding and subtracting fractions. So the most important thing that we need when we are adding subtracting fractions is for the denominators in the fractions to be the same. So they must have a common denominator. Once the denominator in the fractions is the same, we can then work with the whole numbers if there are any, and especially then the numerators, which are the numbers on the top. The denominators will stay the same and they will not change. So let's look at a few examples. We start out with 4/5 and we are subtracting 3/5. We have a common denominator in 5, so we can just operate with the 4 in the numerator here and the 3 in the numerator there, and simply subtract 4 minus 3 and get 1. And again, the denominator will stay the same in the fraction, so our answer for that one is 1/5. With the next one, we have -2/7, and we are adding to that 4/7. Again, we have a common denominator here. Okay, so that will stay the same. We can work with the numerators now. So we have a -2 plus 4, and -2 plus 4 is 2. So we are left with that fraction, or the answer for this problem, to be 2/7. So now we'll start looking at some fractions that do not have common denominators. We have 3/8, and we are adding to that 1/5. The easiest way to find a common denominator is to take the denominators of the fractions you are adding or subtracting and multiply them together. So in this case, I have 8 and 5, and 8 and 5 multiply together to give me 40. So what I've done here is I've done a setup where we can, well, first of all, I like to write my fractions vertically when I'm solving them like this. Some of you can solve them keeping them horizontally or like this, but I like to write them out vertically. It's just easier for me to see. The other thing I did was I was showing you that when we are making when we're finding common denominators and getting different numerators here, we're not really changing the value of the fraction, we're just multiplying by a form of 1. Okay, so if I take 1/5 and I multiply it by 8/8, I'm not really changing the value of the fraction. It is still equivalent to 1/5, it's just in a different format. But anyway, we have 5 down here, and we multiply that 8 and it gives me 40. And so whatever I do to the bottom portion of the fraction, I need to do to the top. So 1 times 8 is 8. So now I have 8/40 instead of 1/5. On the top, if I take 8 and I multiply that by 5, I get 40. Again, whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, I need to do to the top. Or whatever I do to the top of the fraction, I need to do to the bottom. So I take 3, I multiply that by 5, and I get 15. So now I end up with 15 over 40 plus 8 over 40. I have common denominators in 40. So I can take 8 and 15, add the two numerators together, and get 23, and end up with a final result of 23 over 40. With 1/9 minus 4/5. Okay, again, I wrote this in a vertical format, and I need to find a common denominator because 9 and 5 are not the same, so I take 9, multiply that by 5, and I get 45. So 5 times 9 is 45, and again, whatever I did to the bottom of the fraction, I need to do to the top. So 4 times 9 is 36, and since this is a negative, we'll put that negative sign right next to the 36. So 9 times 5 is 45. Whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, I need to do to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. So now my new fractions that I'm working with are 5 over 45 and -36 over 45. So I have my common denominators in 45. So now I can work with the numerators. So I'm taking +5 and I'm subtracting 36 from it. Okay, so in other words, going back to our integer rules, we have a positive and a negative, so the signs are different. We have to find the difference, so we take 36, subtract 5 from that, and it's 31. So we have 31 to go into our numerator. 45 will be our denominator. Remember, that will not change once we find a common denominator. And since 36 over here was the larger quantity, our answer is going to be negative, so we'll end up with a negative 31 over 45. Okay, so what if we had a mixed number? So here we have negative 1/3, and we're adding to that 2 1/5. What I suggest for you to do with these is to change these into improper fractions, these mixed numbers. And the way we do that is we take the denominator and multiply it by the whole number. So we take 5 and multiply that by 2, and we get a product of 10. And then we take the product of 10 and add that numerator. So 10 plus 1 is 11. So our new fraction is going to be 11 over 5. So again, I'll write this in a vertical format because, again, it's just easier for me to see it that way. We have negative 1/3, and we're adding to that 11/5. We do not have a common denominator, so we need to find one. So we take 3, multiply it by 5, and we get 15. 5 times 3 gives me 15, so whatever I did to the denominator, I need to also do to the numerator. 11 times 3 is 33. 3 times 5 is 15, and again, whatever I did to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. 1 times 5 is 5, and we'll put that negative right next to that 5 there. So now my new fractions that I'm working with are negative 5 over 15 plus 33 over 15. My common denominator is 15, so I can just operate with my numerators. I have a negative 5 and a positive 33. Again, my signs are different. I need to find the difference between them. So when I subtract 33 and 5, I get 28 over 15, and we can leave it like that. But we also need to understand that sometimes it's going to be written as a mixed number. You may be asked to do that, and the way to do that is to take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. We've been working with that a little bit when we were converting fractions to decimals. So in this case, the result would have been 1 and 13 over 15. So either of those would be correct because they're both equivalent. All right, folks, we will practice this in class, and I will see you there. Oos.